What a difference a day can make. Wow. This has been just truly a roller coaster for the financial markets this week. Actually, for the last week, since last Wednesday's Liberation Day, if you will. Investors got what they had hoped for. President Trump announced yesterday that he was pausing the effective date of the tariffs on most countries except China. He made it very clear he would not be pausing those tariffs for China. In fact, he raised them again to send a message to China that we're serious about this. Stocks surged, of course, reached one of their highest gains since World War II. Investors were happy, hoping for another repeat today. The S&P soared 9.5% yesterday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained nearly 3,000 points, and the NASDAQ jumped 12.2%. It put a big dent in the paper losses that we have seen this past week. Trump was able to accomplish this by posting this sentence: I have authorized a 90-day pause. That's all he said on Truth Social, and the markets just turned around almost instantly. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, in cut number 4, later told reporters that Trump was pausing the reciprocal tariffs on most of the country's largest trading partners, but maintaining his 10% tariff on nearly all of the global imports. Here's the Secretary of Treasury explaining what Trump had done.
This was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along. And that, you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors. And we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate. It wasn't a hard message. Don't retaliate. Things will turn out well.
Don't retaliate. And those who did not got a reprieve, a slight reprieve, to give them more time to negotiate. China, of course, the big exception. China now stands at 125% tariffs against its products. So how did this all happen? Because let's just kind of look back over this past week. Since Wednesday of last week, when the president announced his plan, Trump officials have been steadfast in saying that they would not back down, that the president was dedicated, that he was committed to imposing these tariffs. They were asked multiple times this last weekend on all the Sunday news talk shows, is there room for negotiation? At that time, it didn't appear there was. It looked like that these tariffs are going to take place. Because, as you looked at this, people were just upset as you really dug in and you realized just how badly the American people have been ripped off all these years. But typical Trump, classic Trump, he's always ready for a deal. Things changed as his advisors talked with him, as he saw the effect that it was having on the stock market. He reconsidered. And it looks like he's going to accomplish everything that he set out to. He still has China in a bad place. It's going to be interesting to see how they respond over the next few days. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who was very adamant on Sunday that there wasn't going to be a pause, even though a lot of people were calling for Trump to pause the implementation of the tariffs, Lutnick was one of the key administration officials who said not going to happen. Yesterday, speaking with Brett Baer, he explained what the president's thought process was at arriving at this decision and how they decided that, yes, it was a good thing and it was appropriate to take a pause. Here's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
So 2 days ago, the president truthed out that he was willing to negotiate with all these different countries that were interested. And then yesterday, He said he would do it in a bespoke fashion, one by one individually. And the calls were unbelievable. And the key was, it wasn't just calls from all these countries, because over 75 called, but they started calling and making real offers. Finally really digging in and understanding how they treat the U.S. unfairly and really offering us a clear path to where we could do really good deals with these countries. And so finally, Scott and I went in and we talked to the president and say, how would you like to deal with this? We have so many countries and they all want to do it now, like now. And then we came up with the view that, look, China is going in the other direction. Let's take on China because they're going in another direction. But with all these other countries, let's give them a chance to negotiate these deals. And that's what happened today.
Welcome in to this Thursday edition of the Mike Gallagher Show. I'm Joey Hudson, in for Mike today. We'd love for you to join the conversation. Was this the right thing to do? To pause the tariffs on most of the countries, with the exception of China? It certainly helped your 401k statement. Again, don't look at it. It came back some yesterday. Or, of course, the Democrats are critical of the president now. They were critical of him last week when he announced the tariffs. Now they're critical of him that he's taking them away or that he's pausing them. Of course, we all know there's nothing that Donald Trump can do that's going to satisfy people like Chuck Schumer anyway. So the president yesterday, as he was meeting with a group of NASCAR drivers, it was just after he had announced the pause on tariffs. And, of course, the media was following them around the White House grounds and couldn't resist. They had to ask him, not about NASCAR drivers, but about the tariffs, of course. He said that he was open to additionally provide some exemptions for certain U.S. companies who had been especially hit hard by tariffs. The President and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent spoke to reporters yesterday, and they were asked repeatedly about the effect of the tariffs, the pause, of course, the effect that it's had on financial markets this past week. And the President gave an explanation of his own. His officials, the Treasury Secretary, as I shared with you a minute ago, Commerce Secretary Lutnick, they all had been out previously explaining the position and why the president had changed his mind on the delay. But the president himself had this explanation in cut number one on why he decided to pause the tariffs after the past week, saying he would not.
You started the morning saying be cool, and just a few hours later, there was a pause put in on the tariffs. Can you walk us through your thinking about why you decided to put a 90-day pause?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents. They wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable. Last year, China made $1 trillion off trade with the United States. That's not right. And now I've reversed it. It's for a short period of time, but we made $2 billion. We're making now $2 billion a day. And somebody had to do it. Roger actually said it. Charles Schwab was here a little while ago, one of the great financial people, and he said he's been waiting for 40 years for somebody to do what I did over the last month. And if you didn't do it, you wouldn't have a country. It wouldn't be sustainable. So I'm honored to have done it. And, look, nothing's over yet, but we have a tremendous amount of spirit from other countries, including China. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. It's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud people. And President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well. And they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out. They're in the process of figuring it out, but they want to make a deal. And we have many other countries, as you know, many more than 75, and they all want to come, and they want to come here, or they'll go to Commerce, or they'll go to Treasury. We have our great senators here and congressmen, They'll call John, they'll do somebody, they'll go through somebody, but they're all calling, how do we do this? They all want to make a deal. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate. So we'll see how it all works out. I think it's going to work out amazing. I think that our country is going to be at the end of a year or shorter, but I think we're going to have something that nobody would have dreamt possible.
President Trump yesterday at the White House, you could see him if you're watching us on the Salem News Channel. You could see all the NASCAR drivers standing behind him. That was the purpose of yesterday. He was congratulating some of the NASCAR champions this year. Of course, the trade war is far from over. I suspect over the next 3 months that a lot of deals will be made. And some of these countries who have been ripping us off for all these years, they're going to rethink their policy. I don't know where China is headed, though. As the president said, China is a proud country. And I think they are especially sensitive to appearing to bow to Donald Trump. So we'll see. Over on CNN, Scott Jennings made a good point saying that this is a big, big win if we can create fair trade deals with other countries while also isolating China. Here's Scott Jennings.
I think one that a lot of people are making, Scott, and it also, I think, is enforced by what happened today, which was a fear that there was an erosion of trust in the United States as a fair broker in the world, as a market that investors even want to be a part of.
Well, the administration is pitching it just the opposite, which is that they're going to deal with the rest of the world and try to isolate China. So I think they see it very much differently than the way Sanders is pitching it. And I think that's the correct way to see it, because China is the bad guy here. They're a bad actor. Anybody who does business with China, in and around China, knows you can't trust them. They steal your IP. They do things, and then they resell it back here in the United States. I mean, they do terrible things to everybody that does business with them. And so if the net result of this ends up being that the United States creates fairer trade deals with the rest of the world and we end up isolating China, I think it will have been worth it.
And that's exactly what we're doing here, folks. I'm Joey Hudson, in for Mike. Hope you're enjoying the conversation on this Thursday edition of the Mike Gallagher Show.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.